One of the elements of historic cabinets and collecting was this tendency to collect oddities and rarities, and then to put them into categories that reflected your worldview if you were the collector. And so one thing we've done at the end of Loca Miraculi here is to look at Chipstone's collection and come up with categories so that we weren't thinking like a modern curator, but we were thinking more like an old-fashioned historic collector. So we've come up with unusual categories, things you wouldn't normally see in a museum. So we have Raritas, or rarities, Rei Extincta, or extinct things, Errata, or errors, and Rei Inexplicabila, or unexplainable things. The cabinets at the end here are modeled after originals that still exist in Halle, Germany. They were built in the 18th century to house a collection that had actually been put together 200 years previously, and they have these wonderful trompe-l'oeil or illusion cornices at the top that are painted to look architectural, but they're painted in these wonderful colors and have objects painted on them to represent the objects that are on display. The Rarities cabinet has 3 shelves. The first shelf is labeled Antiquities and actually has ceramic pieces from the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. The second shelf is labeled Relics and gets at that tendency to collect things that were owned by famous people or were around for very important historic events. So we actually have George Washington's China pattern, Catherine the Great's plate from her Green Frog service, and silver made by early American patriot Paul Revere. This is the Extinct Things cabinet, and there are a lot of historical housewares that were very common in earlier days that are no longer used today, so we're thinking of them as being extinct. So for instance, the first shelf here has Posset Pots, which were drinking vessels that have straws that were meant to let you drink fluid underneath a very foamy drink. The second shelf has chamber pots, which of course were common for hundreds and hundreds of years, but almost no one has them in their houses today in the US. And the bottom shelf has puzzle jugs and fuddling cups, which were confusing drinking vessels that were really used as drinking games in the 17th and 18th century. The Errata cabinet has errors of all different kinds. The first shelf is labeled Blunders, and we have a ceramic figurine in the shape of Benjamin Franklin that's accidentally labeled Washington. We have a shelf labeled Accidents, which not only has a lot of broken historic ceramic pieces, but also a pitcher that melted in the kiln. And the bottom shelf is labeled Fakes and contains objects that were made from the late 19th century all the way up through the 20th century that were made to fool people into thinking that they were antique ceramics. Rei Inexplicabila, or Inexplicable Things cabinet, has a shelf labeled Bizarre Decoration. There are a number of different patterns that were really common on ceramics at different points in time that not only maybe are surprising to people looking at them today, but we also don't necessarily always know where the patterns came from. The splotchy decoration on tin-glazed earthenware from the 1680s is really surprising. The sponge-decorated plates that were common in the 1750s were known as tortoise shell ware, so we think that they were modeled after the tortoise shell, which was a valuable exotic commodity. Second shelf here we called Strange Smalls, and has a lot of sort of miniature pieces of ceramic, one of which is still a big mystery to us. There's a tin-glazed earthenware chair here, and it's the only one like it known, and we, despite a lot of research, are still not sure whether it was made for a doll or whether it was simply made by a potter who was experimenting with different types of forms that he could make.